Hi everyone, welcome to this video where we will understand about different backup and recovery approaches on AWS. So in this video, we will first begin by discussing the need of backup and recoveries and the related things, and choosing AWS services for data protection, that what are the most critical services categories which are needed to be taken care for the data protection in case of a disaster, and what is AWS backup, how does it works, and how to design a backup and recovery solution on AWS, what does it mean by RTO and RPO, and what are the various disaster recovery strategies that can be followed for designing a backup and recovery solution on AWS. So before we begin with today's video, let me give a little introduction about myself. My name is Aishwarya Sood and I am working as a lead coach in the AWS domain. I am 3x AWS certified, also an AWS Academy accredited educator. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. The profile name is given here, and you can also scan this QR code to directly view my profile. So let's begin with today's video with the first topic for today. That is, not even the first topic, let me tell you what is this. The CTO of AWS, that is Werner Vogels, has famously stated on more than one event that everything fails all the time. His pronouncement has continued to influence cloud computing architectural design for many years because it speaks to a truism, and failure should not be thought of as an unlikely anomaly. Instead, it should be assumed that failures, both large and small, can and will occur. How do you prepare for these events? There can be various kinds of events. Majorly, we are defining them into like three categories, I would say. So first can be the small scale event. For example, a single server stopped responding or has went offline from the entire architecture, and a large scale event can be there where in this case multiple resources were affected, and perhaps even across AZs within a region. Multiple resources across multiple AZs were affected. That can be said as a large scale event, and there can be a colossal scale event as well. In this case, the failure is more widespread and it affects a large number of users and systems. So these are the three main categories of the failures that can happen, but the failure, either small or big, we have to learn that how to deal with all kinds of failures. So before we dive deeper into the AWS backup and recovery approaches, firstly let me tell you why there is even a need to backup and recover our data. So we all are aware about primary data failures, which can be the result of hardware or any software failure in the entire system, the data corruption or a malicious attack or accidental deletion of data. Therefore, the main purpose of the backup is to create a copy of the data that can be recovered in the event of a primary data failure, and backup copies will allow the data to be restored from an earlier point in time to help it recover from an unplanned event. So as we know, the growth of enterprise data accelerates, the task of protecting it becomes more challenging. But the AWS backup and recovery solutions, we have a lot of them. They are there to help us in recovering our data. And to minimize the impact of a disaster, the organizations must invest their time and resources to plan and prepare, to train the employees, and to document and update the processes. The amount of investment for disaster planning for a particular system can vary in all the organizations depending on the cost of potential outage. So let's see what are exactly some of the benefits of backing up to AWS. If we choose that we want to back up to AWS, what are the benefits that we will be able to get? With AWS, you can scale up your infrastructure on and as needed on a pay-as-you-go basis, and you will get access to the same highly secure, reliable and fast infrastructure that Amazon itself uses to run its own global network of websites. So few benefits are there, like enhanced data durability and availability. Because AWS cloud storage solutions are designed to deliver increased durability of 11 nines. If you remember, if you know something about S3, so you know that the durability that we get is 11 nines of durability. By synchronously storing your data across multiple AZs, across multiple regions, okay, like in different services. Some service will keep your data across multiple AZs, some will keep your data across multiple servers within the same AZ, so that varies from service to service. copies of every object are distributed across at least 3 AZs that are miles apart within an AWS region if you are storing your data in Amazon S3. Even when practicing the industry's best practices, on-premises capabilities cannot match AWS durability due to the global scale of AWS. And there is more security with AWS than the on-premises. All the AWS customers will benefit from the data centers and the network architectures built to meet the requirements of the most security sensitive organizations in the most regulated industries such as financial services, public sector, and even healthcare. Another benefit of backing up to AWS is that the access your backup data has to be the latest cloud native applications for artificial intelligence, for machine learning, analytics, and business intelligence. This means you can extract the insights from the datasets that in traditional backup architectures would sit idle until recovered for production. And before discussing the various approaches to disaster recovery, it is important to review the AWS services and the features that are the most relevant to it. When planning for any kind of disaster recovery, it is important to consider the use of services and the features that support the data migration and durable storage, because they will enable you to restore the backed up critical data to AWS when any disaster strikes, either big or small. For some of the scenarios that involve either a scaled down or a fully scaled deployment of your system in AWS, compute resources will be required as well. And during a disaster, you need to either spin up the new resources or fail over to existing pre-configured resources. These resources not only include the code and content, but other pieces such as DNS entries, any network firewall rules, and virtual machines, etc. as well. So in the context of disaster recovery, when we talk about compute, it is critical to be able to rapidly create virtual machines that you control. By launching instances in the separate AZs, you can protect your applications from the failure of a single location, or you can say a single availability zone. For disaster recovery of the compute resources, you may want to use the EC2 snapshot capability. Basically, we take the snapshot of a EC2 instance. That means we are taking a backup of the EC2 instance for a point in time. Let's say I'm working on EC2 instance. I have done something, and right now I take a snapshot of it, so that later if I need, I will be able to recover the EC2 instance from that. How do I do that? The snapshot will be used as an AMI. From AMI, I'll be able to launch the EC2 instance, and that's how we recover it from the snapshot. And snapshots can be performed manually or they can be scheduled. For example, by using AWS Lambda function, we can write a Lambda function which takes the snapshot of your EC2 instances at some particular schedule. And you might want to replicate Amazon S3 as well across regions, and you probably also want to replicate your most critical AMIs and the snapshots across regions for high availability. And make sure you store the essential data off to the instance. Okay, it should not be like that any critical data is stored in the temporary storage of instance, like instance stored, or it is stored there itself. No, it should not be like that. It should be stored off of the instance, okay, so that even if the instance fails, the data is still protected. And you can configure your own AMIs in the context of disaster recovery. It is recommended that you configure and identify your own AMIs so that they can launch as a part of your recovery procedure. Such AMIs should be pre-configured with any operating system and any pre-installed software of your choice that you might be needing for your servers. The auto scaling should be configured, the AMIs should be ready, okay, the licensing should be done, okay. It should not be like that you are going to launch the EC2 instances in case of a disaster and the software license has expired. No, make sure you are taking care of all these things. So in context of disaster recovery, when it comes to the storage category, what do? We have different storage services that are available on AWS, and depending on what we are using in our architecture, we have the recovery options and ensuring the high availability. We have different features in all of them, all of the services. So in S3, what we can do, we can enable a feature known as cross region replication, which is a bucket level configuration that will enable the automatic asynchronous copying of objects across buckets in the different AWS regions. The buckets involved in this will be known as the source bucket and the destination bucket. All you need to do is like just go to one bucket in S3, and in the S3 bucket that you are in right now, enable the cross region replication feature and specify that you want to replicate either the entire bucket or some specific objects of that particular bucket, and then specify the destination bucket. The destination bucket will be in a separate region than the source bucket. So whatever you store in the source bucket, from next time it will be replicating to the destination bucket as well. And they can also be owned by different AWS accounts. And in EBS, it gives us the ability to take the point in time snapshots. So you can use the snapshots as the starting point of your new EBS volumes, and you can protect your data for long-term durability because snapshots are stored within Amazon S3 again. After volume is created, you can attach it to running EC2 instance, and EBS volumes provide off instance storage that persists independently from the life of an instance. You remember on the previous slide I was saying that you should store the critical data of the instance. Okay, so this is an option. You can use EBS for those purposes so that it is persisted for a longer time. Another thing that we have is AWS Snowball, which is used for data transport, which accelerates moving the terabytes or petabytes of data into and out of AWS using the physical storage devices designed to be secure for physical transport as well. So you create a job in your AWS account if you need a Snow family device like Snowball, Snowmobile or Snowcon, and that device will be shipped to your location. You transfer your data into that device. That device will be sent back to AWS. They will transfer the data from that device into the AWS. This is how it all works. Okay, this is for terabytes or petabytes of data. Apart from this, we have data sync, which we can use to efficiently and securely synchronize the files from on-premises or in cloud file systems to EFS, that is Amazon Elastic File System. Okay, at speeds of around up to 10x faster than the open source tools that are already available. So data sync securely and efficiently copies the files over the internet or even on a DX connection if you want the internet should not be involved. Apart from this, we have got AWS Storage Gateway, which is ideal for hybrid use cases. So it uses the power of Amazon S3 for common on-premises backup and storage requirements, which is another amazing service in the storage. Again, getting back to the category of database in context of DR, what do we do here? For your database needs, consider using the Amazon RDS, DynamoDB or Redshift. You can use RDS either in the preparation phase for disaster recovery to hold your critical data in a database that is already running, or in the recovery phase to run your production database. So when you want to look at multiple regions, RDS is the right choice because it gives you the ability to snapshot the data from one region to another using something known as cross-region snapshots, and also to have a read replica running in another region. So RDS backup. Now consider an example architecture for a backup solution that is based on RDS. There the architecture will look something like this. Let me show you. So something like this. I'll explain this in a while. First, let me tell you that in RDS you will have the snapshot capability that, as I explained earlier also, cross-region snapshots are there. You have read replicas in order to offload the read workload to the read replicas, where only the read queries will be sent and the write queries will be sent to the primary database. Also we have multi-AZ feature. so that if we want our database to be present across multiple AZs. Apart from this, we can also use Amazon DynamoDB in the preparation phase to copy the data to DynamoDB in another region or to Amazon S3, and during the recovery phase of disaster recovery, you can scale up seamlessly in a matter of minutes with a single click or API call. That's very quick in DynamoDB. We can back up the entire tables within seconds itself. Now coming back to the example where we are using RDS as a backup solution. So here in this architecture, in a region which is spanning across two AZs, we have each public and private subnet in each of the AZ, and in this public subnet we have application servers. In both the private subnets we have the database available. Okay, so this is a primary database, this is a secondary one. Here the synchronous replication is happening across with the use of multi-AZ feature of RDS, and the snapshots are being sent to an S3 bucket, and here the snapshots are being copied to the another bucket in S3. So here what snapshots are being sent? The snapshots and the transaction logs, whatever transactions are happening in the database, they are stored in an S3 bucket, okay, within this region that is controlled by Amazon RDS. And with RDS you can also specify it to copy automated or manual database to a second AWS region, and you can also copy the snapshots to separate AWS accounts. Here we are just taking the snapshots of this database and we are sending it to bucket within the same region, and on this we have enabled the cross region replication, which is automatically sending the snapshots to a bucket in the another region as well. So this is providing a good backup solution along with RDS and S3. Because let's say even if any of the AZ fails, we will have the copy of the database, because we are having a primary and secondary one due to the multi-AZ feature. And even if both the AZ fails, we have the copy of the snapshots, the snapshots itself in the S3 bucket within the region, so we can restore from this. So maybe that is unlikely that a region fails, but that is also not impossible. So let's say even if the region fails, we still have the copy available in another region. So any case, even if AZ fails, even if the region fails, we still have the snapshots available in S3 bucket so that we can restore the database from that. Okay, and now coming to the networking category, when you are dealing with disaster, it is very likely that you will have to modify the network settings as your system is failing over to the another site. So AWS has several services and the features that enable you to manage and modify the networking settings, such as Amazon Route 53 ELB, that is Elastic Load Balancers, VPC, and Direct Connect. So let's see these services in brief. So in the context of disaster recovery, how we can use VPC? We can use it to extend our existing network topology to the cloud, and this can be especially appropriate when recovering enterprise applications that are typically on the internal network. And ELB automatically distributes the incoming application traffic across multiple EC2 instances. It also enables you to achieve even greater fault tolerance in your applications by seamlessly providing the load balancing capacity that is needed in response to incoming application traffic. Even if some of the servers fail in your entire architecture, what ELB will do, it will just stop sending the traffic to those servers and it will keep sending the traffic to the healthy servers. Also, apart from this, we have Direct Connect, which makes it easy to set up a dedicated network connection from your on-premises to AWS. So in many cases, this can reduce your network cost, increase the bandwidth throughput, and provide a more consistent network experience than internet-based connections. Because since this is creating a dedicated network connection, that means internet is not involved. That means, of course, the speed of transfer will be higher. And last in the networking category that we have here is Amazon Route 53. So this also includes a number of global load balancing capabilities. We have a lot of routing policies available in Route 53, which can distribute our traffic based on different kinds of use cases like geolocation routing, geo proximity routing, latency based routing, and many more. So we can decide like how we want to route the traffic, how we want to manage the DNS all over the architecture. So these are all the important service categories and the services which are very essential in the disaster recovery procedures, because all of them will be playing a major role. The VPC, Route 53, especially in the storage, we have different features, and in every category that we have discussed. Now coming to another service which can be used for backup purposes is AWS backup. So for centralized backup, we have this service which is fully managed backup service for centralizing and automating the backup of data across AWS services. So you will understand it better once we see the demo, but let me tell you a few points about this. So yes, this provides a centralized console to automate and manage the backups across AWS services. It also supports EBS, RDS, Amazon DynamoDB, EFS, FSx, Amazon EC2, and so many services to enable you to back up the key data stores such as your storage volumes, databases, and the file systems. Also, you can enforce your backup policies, encrypt your backups, protect your backups from manual deletion, and prevent changes to your backup lifecycle settings, and audit and report on backup activity from a centralized console to help meet your backup compliance requirements. Basically, we will be getting a centralized console where the backups of all of these services that I just told you, they will be sitting all together. We can automate it, we can create on-demand backup, and so many other things. So let's see this on console, and like how do we set up for the manual and for the scheduled backups. We will see that. So on the AWS console, which service you have to find, you just have to write AWS backup and you will get this. Okay, just click on this AWS backup and you have two options to create the backups here. Okay, so first thing that you can do is you can create a backup plan that will be automating based on the schedule that you specify. When do you want to take the backup of your resources? So let's first create this backup plan. What we can do, we can define it using JSON. We can start with the template, or we can build a new plan where we have more customizations available. Let's say right now we will be creating with the template. So here, what does it mean by template? What kind of templates have we got? Like daily, and then 35-day retention, daily backup, monthly backup, and then 1 year retention. So what kind of backups, like when should the backups be taken? Daily, weekly, monthly, 7 years of retention. For this demo, this should be fine. Daily backup and a 35-day retention will be fine. So what is the name of this backup plan? Let me name it as sample. Okay, then you can add the tags to your backup plan. Okay, this is a rule, the daily backups that we have chosen in the template. Okay, then just click on this create plan. Okay, now the plan has been created. Now what resources backup should it take? That we have to define. We have to define it here on the assigned resources. So for for what resources it should take the backup, I have to specify here, like if I want to include all the resource types or any specific resource type. Let's say if I say I want to include only specific resource types, I have to select a resource type from here. What is the service whose backup do I want to take? Let's say I say EC2 instance, and then which EC2 instance? Okay, all instances or any particular EC2 instance. I would say demo EC2 is the one for whom you should take the backup. And then I can also exclude specific resource IDs that you can take all the backups, but not this resource. And I can define the tags here for the configuration as well. So resource assignment 1, let me say this is the first resource assignment. And role also, you can use a default role which will create the correct permissions, which will create a rule with the correct permissions that are required for it. Otherwise, if you already have a role which you want to assign, you can choose an IAM role and then define it. So let's say I have assigned the resources. That means my EC2 instance that I have specified here, it will be backed up and where it will be kept now. Okay, the schedule has been set that daily the backup of this EC2 should be taken, and then where it should be kept. It will be kept in something known as backup vaults. Okay, right now I'm using the default one itself. I have not specified another but I can create a backup vault and I can say in this particular backup vault my backups should be kept. Okay, so right now no backup has been taken, that's why it is saying 0, but I can create a on demand backup. That was a scheduled one that we created previously, but what if I want a backup right now? What I can do, I can go to dashboard and let's see where we can create on-demand backups. Okay, not in the dashboard, it is in the protected resources. Yes, we just have to go to the protected resources and click create on-demand backup. Here I have to specify the resource type. Let's say I take EC2 and then what instance ID, demo EC2, and I can specify the backup window when I want to take the backup, or I can specify if I want to create the backup right now. It will start within an hour. It says like that, but most of the times it will take the backup immediately within few minutes. And retention period, how long it should be kept, I say always. And backup vault in which it should be kept, the default one itself. The role, again I am choosing the default one only. Then click create on demand backup. Now this has been created. Okay, let me refresh. It is running also. I can check it from the jobs. It is running. This means it is taking the backup of my EC2 instance, okay, which is named as a demo EC2. It is taking the backup of that. You can keep refreshing it within few seconds. This backup will be available and you can go to backup vaults, and in this default backup vault there will be one backup available. Okay, like right now there is no backup available, but once this job is finished, once this is available, the backup of my EC2 instance, then in the backup vault you can access the backup that it has taken for your EC2 instance. So this was just for EC2. You can create the backups of other supported services as well. Okay, the main purpose is that here it is giving you the flexibility for backups, like you can create the automated ones, you can create on-demand ones, and moreover you are able to access all the backups on a centralized console itself. You won't have to go to each service and then check the backups. You can just come here on the dashboard on the backup vaults as per your requirement, and you will be able to access all your backups on a single place. So let it run. If it gets ready soon, I'll show it in the video. Otherwise it will be if you are working on it later after the video, you just need to go to the backup vault and it will be available there. From there you can restore it. Okay, let's go back to the slides now. So when designing or developing a comprehensive strategy for backing up and restoring the data, you must first identify the possible failure or disaster situations and their potential business impact. We have multiple things for recovery, like what we can take care of. File level recovery for configuring the files for an application. Application data level recovery for a specific data with database within MySQL. We have application level recovery for a specific web server application version. We have Amazon EC2 volume level recovery for an EBS volume. Then EC2 instance level recovery for an EC2 instance, and managed service recovery for a DynamoDB table, let's say, because that's a managed service. To facilitate a successful restore process, you need to coordinate the backup and recovery between various components in your architecture. And what exactly is a disaster recovery? Because further we are going to discuss some strategies for this. So disaster recovery is all about preparing for and recovering from a disaster. We have seen a disaster. So this can be any event that has a negative impact on a company's business continuity or finances. That can be even the small one or even the large ones, and this can include the hardware or even the software failure, a network outage, a power outage, physical damage to a building like fire or flooding, human error, or some other significant event. All of these are the examples of a disaster because they can impact your architecture and the entire system. The backup and restore approaches and supporting services and technologies can be used to implement your disaster recovery solution. So let's dive a little deeper now into the disaster recovery objectives and the strategies. So before we go ahead with the disaster recovery strategies, it is very important to understand what is RPO and what is RTO. RPO stands for Recovery Point Objective. It is basically the acceptable amount of data loss that is measured in terms of time. For example, if a disaster occurs at, let's say, 12 pm in the noon and the RPO is 1 hour, the system should recover all the data that was in the system before 11 am, and the data loss will span only 1 hour between 11 am and 12 pm. That means that can be recreated or that can be lost. It is like affordable, but before 11 am that should be recovered at any case. And then RTO stand for recovery time objective, which is the time it takes after a disruption to restore a business process to its service level as defined maybe by the operational level agreement. So for example, if a disaster occurs at 12 pm noon and the RTO is 8 hours, the DR process should restore the business process to the acceptable service level by 8 pm maximum. It can afford only that much of time. It should recover the entire system within 8 hours because the RTO was 8 hours in that case. So each disaster recovery strategy will have a different RPO and RTO, and based on your use case you will also have a different RPO and RTO. We can learn about different strategies and let's understand them. So DR strategies, organizations often use these four most common patterns: backup and restore, pilot light, warm standby and multi-site. Each pattern is well suited to different requirements. Some of the patterns offer better cost effectiveness, others provide a faster RPO and faster RTO but cost more to maintain. Let's have a deep dive into these disaster recovery strategies one by one. So the first one is backup and restore pattern, where what happens, this is your main site running on, your main architecture is running on continuously, the backup is going on to S3. Okay, the main site can be running either on premises or maybe on AWS. The continuously data is being backed up to AWS. So in terms of a disaster, that data will be restored to create the new system. Okay, where the data was continuously getting backed up as a backup solution. In case of a disaster, that data we will have to restore in order to set up the new system, in order to recover from the failure. That's a little slow process when we compare it with the other strategies that are available, which is pilot light and all the other strategies as well. So in pilot light, what happens, we have this main site running. Okay, this is a full-fledged running, but in the backup solution, in the backup site, what we have done, we do not create the resources in case of a disaster. We have already created the resources, let's say all the EC2 instances and everything, but they are not running. Okay, only in case of a disaster, when this architecture has failed, we will go back to this architecture, we will turn on these EC2 instances and they will be able to take up the production load. Okay, but all the other times only this architecture will be running, not this one. This will be existing, but this won't be running. In backup and restore, it was not even existing, but in pilot light, this is existing but not running. And moving to the next strategy, that is warm standby. Here what happens, we have the main site running here and this is a backup site. Here what is happening, we have the main site is full-fledged running, but in the backup site we have a scaled down version running on. If we have 4 servers running here we are just having 2 servers running in only one AZ. Here across 2 AZs 4 servers were running, but in the backup solution only 2 servers are running in one AZ. So basically a scaled down version of your entire infrastructure is running, so that in case of a disaster, some of the load should be taken immediately by the running resources. The rest of the workload will be taken by the other resources once they are running as well. So it will take the time like just to run the resources which are already existing, and then it will be able to take up the entire load. So this is a scaled down version. Half of the resources are running, half of the resources are just existing but not running. Now coming to the last disaster recovery strategy, this is multi-site active. This is the easiest to understand because what's happening, we have the main site here, we have the backup site here. Both of the sites are having full-fledged infrastructure running on all the time. 24/7 the entire infrastructure is running in the main site as well as in the backup site. You can see all the servers, all the other resources here also are running. in the backup site also they are active. So in case of a disaster, anytime this backup site can take up the entire production workload. This can provide zero downtime because the workload won't have to wait even for a few seconds in order to shift from here to here. This is always running any instant of time. You can just redirect the traffic from this to this one because all the resources are already running here. But as I said that all the resources are running, which means it is the most costliest one because all the resources are running all the time. So what's the main difference between all of these strategies? Here, when we talk about backup and restore, the RTO and RPO, when in case it is in hours, we can go for this strategy. But as we move to the right, if the RPO and RTO needs to be real time and we want zero downtime, we can go for multi-site active. The cost will be of course very less in the backup and restore, but the multi-site active will be the costliest among all. As we move to the right, cost is increasing, the RPO and RTO is decreasing, and as we move to the left, RPO and RTO is increasing and the cost is decreasing. So the choice is yours based on your use case. You can decide which disaster recovery strategy suits your use case and you will be good to go once you are clear with the answer to this question. So I hope everything is clear from today's video and we will now meet in the next video. Thank you.